Good morning. If you're here for the Valheim panel, past, present, future, you're in the right place. I hope everyone had a good session that they've just come from. I am really looking forward to this chat. So just a little bit of context, and I'm going to do my best to not butcher these Swedish names and places. But sitting next to me here are Jason Smorsh and Andreas Tomasson, who are Jonathan Smorsh and Andreas Tomasson from Skövde, Sweden.
Pretty close.
That was not close at all. I did it much better earlier. The nerves just really messed everything up there. But we're joined by them all the way from Sweden. They traveled here just for the conference, which we should all be really appreciative for. We have the next 50 minutes to have just like a panel discussion about Valheim, from when it began to how the last few years of early access have been and what plans are for the future. I have some really interesting questions, and I guess to start off, I would just like to have you speak to the audience around when you joined the Iron Gate Studios team and at what point in the kind of Valheim production you joined, and then from there we'll kind of pick apart. We'll start with the past. When you joined, when that chapter started. So, over to you, Andreas.
Yeah, so me and Jonathan, we started 3.5 years ago at Iron Gate Studio. That was just after the Early Access was released on Steam. And so when they realized it was a big hit, they didn't expect that at all. So they were starting to recruit people, and me and Jonathan and Christopher, our animator.
Yeah, so what's so fascinating, just for context, those that didn't know, in February 2021, Valheim released an early access, and within the first week sold, I think, 1 to 2 million copies. And was an absolute,
it works now.
Cultural moment for the survival genre, for streamers. It felt like everyone was playing it, and so that's quite fascinating. That they obviously needed to expand their team to cater to the immediate growth that happened. Jonathan, when did you join the team? Was it around the same time, post?
Yeah, we both joined like quite soon after the early access release.
Yeah, so the team was about 5 when early access was released, and how big did the team scale after that initial big burst of success? What did the kind of team after you joined look like? What was the next phase of the team structure?
Yeah, there was a few. We haven't hired a lot of people at the same time, so I think 3 was the biggest at the same time when we joined. But then after that, it's been like maybe 1 or 2 people per year. But we're still, the team, the development team is still around 6 or 7 people.
That's so fascinating. I think that's really worth talking about, is how you were able, or how it was clearly an intention to keep the team small. I'm sure there was a lot of pressure, whether it was from publisher or from the community, from their demands. Can you speak a little bit about how you didn't overgrow, and how much of that is ingrained in the culture of maybe what Iron Gate was built to be? Can you speak a little bit about why you didn't grow so fast?
Yeah, sure. I think there were definitely tons of comments like, why don't you just hire 100 people and make everything in this game and release it tomorrow? But it takes time, as you probably all know. It takes time to make good games, and I think it would have been a very different game if it turned into a huge studio, just hire lots of people and the culture would change and you don't know who you are. I think the main reason, when hiring people at Iron Gate, is find somebody that fits well into the team, and we don't want to be more people than we can basically fit around the table, so everybody can know everybody, hang out with everybody, and have the feeling of we're just a bunch of friends making games together.
Yeah.
And I guess I can add on to that as well, is that one of our latest hires was due to, as we're growing, I was taking care of QA management and release management, and also candidate producer as well at that point. And I was just getting kind of a bit overwhelmed with all of these things, because as we grow, we push it to new platforms. Like the work that goes into making all these things a bit too much. So I realized, okay, I can't handle this. We need to find someone new. And yeah.
Yeah, so as the producer, like, are there multiple producers? What does as a producer myself, I'm really fascinated about how you are able to not get overwhelmed and, need a team of 10 producers to manage all of the, especially, porting, community management, internal comms. What does the production department look like at Irongate?
Good question. And I mean, it is hard to be the producer, and I try to make sure that everyone do have things to do everywhere. Try to make sure that the communication between all the teams are working well. And since I worked in QA, I also started to fix stuff myself back then as well, a little bit. And that's a blessing and a curse once you start fixing stuff, because instead of just going to Jonathan or anyone on the team, I'm like, you can fix it. I'm like, wait a minute, I'll just fix this myself, because it takes maybe 5 minutes to do it instead of just writing down a ticket for Jonathan. It doesn't make sense. But I mean, it works. A lot of planning, a lot of making sure things are getting done. Yeah.
Do you know how, and this probably came about when you joined, but how the roadmap changed from when Valheim released in early access to when the team expanded and there was all of a sudden this massive community with probably hourly, daily suggestions, videos being uploaded? How did the roadmap change so that you could kind of handle that feedback, or the roadmap / the upload, the patch cadence?
Yeah.
Yeah, the roadmap, so to say, was not really it wasn't really a roadmap. It was also kind of pushed by our publisher at the moment. It became a huge success, and they're like, we need to have a roadmap. So actually, it was something kind of just thrown together in an afternoon. It was more like they asked oh, so what are things you're going to work on? And then they kind of put together maybe this and maybe that and maybe that. And then the format of it was maybe not great. How it's really looks like this is what's going to happen, and it's going to happen very soon. So it was actually pulled quite quickly.
Yeah, I don't think it even was approved by our boss. They just pushed it. So yeah, it was a bit too quick there.
Yeah.
So was it shared publicly, that roadmap? Because I imagine that would have created a cycle of committing to something. I mean,
it still haunts us today. There's still people oh yeah, look at the roadmap. They still haven't completed this. To be fair, we have actually done most of the things on the roadmap. I think there's one thing from the original roadmap that is not complete. Yep. But still, yeah, it was shared, and there was and still is quite a bit of backlash from that. So tip, no roadmaps.
Yeah. I think what I really love about having your time here in New Zealand is that most of the teams here, especially the next generation of studios, are most likely going to be small teams with teams of 2 to 10 people. And I think just having your knowledge and sharing, even just the idea that roadmaps aren't a priority for small, nimble teams that are just making games for fun and for passion, even though that's a pressure from both the community and the publisher. It's interesting just to hear that inside look at how those decisions come about. Yeah,
but that being said, I think it really depends on how you work. Some teams will definitely have a roadmap. If they know this is exactly what they're going to do, it's good to communicate. One thing that we've learned over the years is the more we communicate, the better. The community doesn't have to have everything done by next week, but the more you do talk to them, the happier they will be. So if you do know that this is what you're going to do, it could be a great idea to have a roadmap, but we are a little bit more not so planned and spontaneous in that regard. So we kind of want to work on the thing that we're working on right now, and then we'll figure out the rest later.
A lot of my questions revolve around community, because I think that is a cornerstone to a successful title, and just to your experience with developing Valheim. How do you get access to your community feedback? How do you have that connection? Is it through Discord? Is it through emails, Steam blogs? What's the main kind of mode of communication you have with your community?
I think we're just looking everywhere, all over the place, right? Twitter, Steam forums, which can be very interesting, Steam forums, but Reddit, Discord chat, emails, DMs on like Discord as well. So yeah, we really try to be out there. And I know that like YouTube creators and content creators, some of them dare to poke us, and we're more than happy to like have a chat with them as well. And so that funnels the whole community part as well, because then we show up on their streams or their videos, and we have a chat with them and their community, and we try to gather feedback from there as well. So yeah, we're always listening, always watching, as good as we can.
Yeah, I think one thing compared when I try to like get in touch with some other developers sometimes is realizing how hard that can be, and not all of us like are interested in having too many DMs and stuff, but there's quite a few that will take and answer your actual messages. If somebody really wants to reach out to us, we'll probably read it and answer.
Yeah. Awesome. And yeah, we're still hovering around that kind of initial release phase. I have a note here about a new office that you guys moved into. At what point did that happen in a journey? Because I can imagine that's quite disruptive to the team, and I'm curious to know why and yeah, what that new office phase looked like and why you moved and how that's going.
Yeah, so initially, like Valheim started as a solo project from our founder, and then they had like this tiny little office, and then they moved into a slightly bigger office, and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
And then the release happened. So that new office, it was already quite small, and they realized that this is already not small enough. I mean, not big enough. So then we found another one that was also really close by. But the process of getting to that office, and the game was just released, and there was so much to do there, and also that setting up the office in a nice state took quite a lot of time. So we were still like kind of cramped into this other small office. We are a hybrid studio, so a lot of us work from home. But when we all like gathered at the office, like we were maybe 3 guys sitting in the conference room with our laptops. Like it's basically like a LAN party, just working on stuff. And sometimes like, oh, we have to have a meeting. Everybody go out, or something like that. So yeah, but it's been a long journey, and it's still not quite done. Like the office is really nice, but yeah, we're working on the like patio area and stuff like that. So
nice. So you have more than just a meeting room now. You have enough for everyone when everyone's in the office.
Yeah. I think it makes a huge difference also, to be honest, like having a good space where people feel like relaxed and having a good vibe. Just did you feel like, oh, this is a nice creative space to work in and you can relax.
Yeah, and also like before we had the same room for meetings, lunch, and hangouts. It was a bit too much, yeah. So now we have a dedicated space for actually lunch and hangout, and yeah.
We have a bar.
Yeah, a whole other world now. So
awesome. You mentioned hybrid team. How has that been, and has that evolved at all over the last few years? Like, what's your definition of hybrid?
Yeah, like I'd say maybe a third of the team now lives in Skövde, and are there mostly every day. And the rest live in other locations around Sweden. And we try to meet up. I would say I go there at least every other week or so for a few days. And then, like Andreas moved away from Skövde.
Yeah, it's a very small town, so I had to move out from there. But I do visit. Sorry?
You didn't move to New Zealand?
Nah, not yet. But maybe one day. Yeah.
So everyone's within the same time zone, though. You're hybrid, but all within Sweden.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
And one thing that like we do have still is that we don't mind hiring anybody at all, but it's like the people that we have hired have been like Swedish speaking, so it's quite rare, even like in Sweden especially. Most game studios are English speaking, but at the office we still everybody knows Swedish, so it's also quite nice.
Yeah, nice. That's and about culture, what does the culture feel like? Is there a lot of discussion or work that's done around creating a culture, and is there anything that you'd say is what you're proud of that you've created within this culture of a small team?
Yeah, I mean, it's very laid back, right? Like when we were hired, I think like I was told like, oh, I got hired because I was such a nice person to just hang out with, and I was like, yeah, sure, okay, I'll take that. But I think that's really like the vibe that we want to go for. Whenever we hire someone, we want to make sure that it's a nice person to just hang out with and someone who's chill and relaxed. And as we grow, like of course we do have some like pain from growing because some people may not compute with one another perfectly at all times. But we are discussing it, and I think like we should be very proud of like the overall feeling at the office. Like we can be wherever we want to be, and we can, yeah, just have a nice time when we're not working. We're very silly that way, but yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and that's, I think, really important to hear that culture can exist with an incredibly successful game that has been in development for several years. And, you know, people that want to make a career out of games, knowing that there's people out there that, you know, can find friends and hang out and just make great games. It doesn't have to become corporate. It doesn't have to become, like, the fun out of games doesn't have to be stripped out. And I think you guys are a perfect example of that. Moving into, oh, by the way, around questions, there's going to be a moment at the end for questions. If anyone's got a burning question, just raise your hand, and I'll try make sure I see it. Maybe just like cough really loud if you're waiting. Otherwise, we'll have a moment at the end, and I'm sure they'd love to hear any questions that you might have in the audience. But moving into the kind of present phase and talking more about the game itself, I know there's been several big updates, I don't know if you'd call them DLCs over the last few years, with like the Mistlands and the Bog Witch is the latest one. How has the pressure from the community changed over the last few years, and do you still feel that pressure from the community now compared to the state of everything 3 years ago? Like, do you feel like you know your community, they know what you're building, and it's smooth sailing, or is there still a lot of you know, busy moments in development at this stage?
I think there's always going to be a lot of voices because there's a lot of players, and the loudest ones are always the ones you hear. But I think we find kind of a nice balance. Like, a lot of games have releases much more often, like every week or every month, and we're definitely a slower team, and I think that's also okay. We prefer to take our time and make sure that what we release is that we're happy with it. And hopefully that is, like, we try to think what is the best for the game in the long run. Like looking back, kind of like a legacy thing where you're like, okay, what is the greater good of Valheim, rather than just trying to please, like, okay, just do the next thing. But I mean, our main updates have been the big biome updates, like Mistlands and Ashlands, and in between those, we've tried to made a number of smaller updates, like you mentioned. Just a few days ago, we had the Bog Witch update, which has a number of smaller things, but it's also nice to see, like I saw some comment on the internet, like this update gives me much more than the big biome updates. So it's kind of like catering to different types of people a little bit, and it's also nice to hear that like even the small stuff is quite appreciated sometimes.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that, catering to different areas within the community or different types of players. How important is that in the development? Is there a strong community that kind of holds that have the most voices that you hear, that you take, like hardcore gamers, for example, compared to casual gamers that are maybe playing the game for the first time? Like, how do you balance legacy players that have been playing for 3.5 years to players that might be picking up the game for the first time when it comes to like the Bog Witch release?
I mean, yeah. First off, we don't have like an analytics within the game, so we just have to listen to what people say and just follow our own like feels as well. But I think like we do have quite a nice concept. I think like with these big updates with Mistlands and Ashlands, like that's for the end game content, if you would like to say so. And we also try to have the in-between patches, such as the Bog Witch now, which caters to all the different kind of players. And then we have like previously just added, it was quite a long time ago, but like the Abomination, a new monster in the swamps. Just trying to make some bits there to make it a bit more fun for everyone. And as we slowly progress into 1.0, like we just want to make sure that the game is the way we wanted it to be. So.
Yeah, and like Andreas was saying a little bit, like I think a lot of games, I think it's really important to listen to your community, but it's also really important to listen to your like original vision or your own intuition and your own feel of like, this is the game we're trying to make. Because if you listen to everybody, you can't listen to everybody. But if you try, then you will end up just going everywhere and not really making it will be a completely different game by the end. And maybe that's a good thing in some cases. Maybe it would make like sense sales-wise, like in the short term. But I think one thing that I'm happy that we do is like we're thinking more of like, no, building something that we want in the long term, and also trusting our gut feeling a lot of the time, and at the same time not being like just shutting off the community feedback.
Yeah, it's a really interesting balance, isn't it? And when it comes to the vision holder, how does that? Yeah, what does that process look like currently? Between balancing, actually an interesting question I thought of was, have there been any systems or features that you implemented that you ended up taking out after the community didn't understand it or didn't like it? Because I find those moments, are interesting. Have there been anything like that, or any like big changes to systems that initially maybe had a different vision that have evolved into something else?
I guess like one example was we added a turret that targets everything, because we thought this is like the Valheim way of like, you can get hit by a tree. If you go in front of an automatic turret, it's going to shoot you and one-shot you probably. And that was like a pretty big outlash that this was a horrible, horrible idea. So that was one of the things that we kind of like took back and like thought, okay, maybe we have to do some variant of this instead. Like we didn't go all the way back and just say no, it's not going to shoot players, but there's the option to kind of specify like which enemies that it's going to hit.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's ever been like we add something and then completely remove it. If there's like player voices who says it's bad or terrible, we just try to meet them halfway, maybe because more often than not, or every single time when we add something, it's something that we believe in. And then when we get the player feedback that maybe they're not as happy as we thought they would be, we try to meet them somewhere halfway. We don't usually go for like whatever the player says, how we should fix it, because we want to stay true to our vision as well. And I think that's kind of, with the turret is a great example with that, I think.
Yeah, and also just, it's more like usually balance would be a thing that we take in a lot of input on. But the problem there is too that maybe we release something that we think this is probably a good level, and then we get a lot of like maybe feedback like recently like, oh, this is way too hard in Ashlands. Then we tone it down a little bit. Then we get the other feedback like, no, it was perfect as it was, like because those people weren't complaining at the initial release. So then it's like, So what do you do
when you have that conflicting player base that can't agree on something?
Well, one thing that we did do was we added server modifiers, so you can actually change the difficulty level yourself. And I think that is kind of solves that in a lot, because if somebody really wants it to be harder or easier, then you just change it yourself. Like we do believe a lot in that it's your game, you play it however you want to, not trying to force you to play it in a certain way. But I think it's like we'd rather release something that's a little bit too difficult, so it's not like an anticlimactic experience for those who like the challenge, and then maybe tone it down a little bit, rather than doing it the other way.
Yeah. That's good advice. Before the talk started, someone came up and told a story about how when you implemented catapults that they would put themselves in the catapult and had a really great experience with their buddies. And I want to talk a little bit about emergent gameplay and how that has, because I think you implemented that catapult system and you didn't restrict the ability for the player to sit in that catapult. And I'm just curious about how just fun is defined for the Iron Gate team, and how you make it possible to have these emergent experiences, because I'm sure that's a big part of how Valheim has evolved into being an experience that every player can have a different experience. I guess, what are your thoughts on emergent gameplay?
Yeah, so the catapult example, that was more like we were going to build a catapult and discussed it, and then I was building it and I was like, there's no way that I'm going to build a catapult and not being able to launch myself in it, because it wasn't that we just left it there, I actually add that feature, otherwise it wouldn't probably have worked so well. But at first I was like, there's no way I'm going to do this if I can't launch myself. Maybe we have to limit it in some way or so on, like you could just add the fall damage or something. But so we did that, and then and also because there's also no way that players would be happy with they're getting a catapult and you can literally stand there and then just like fall off that. Yeah, I think that would be a bad decision. But then later we kind of realized, kind of late when I was building it, first I was like tweaking it to be like, okay, well, it's a decent amount. You can fly over there and maybe you die from fall damage. And then we kind of late realized like, oh yeah, we added the feather cape before, so actually you can, if you have the feather cape on, you basically can fly across the entire world almost, like Batman. And then we're like, okay, well, if you want to do it, fine. It's fun, so let's just leave it there.
Yeah. Yeah, but that didn't, I guess, break. I mean, being able to fly around the map sounds like it could break stuff, but...
Yeah, it could definitely break stuff a little bit, but it's also added so late in the game, so I think it's okay. Like if that was something that was added early on, then we'd have to limit it because then it would like kind of like circumvent the main progression line. But I think like adding it in Ashlands, then you've already done all that so many times, so it's fine if you want to catapult yourself to the other island.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we also added the like we have the portals, and in Ashlands we have the portals where you can also just portal your materials, like that wasn't portable before, so
yeah,
go ahead and shoot away with your catapult if you want to.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone else about that and how the travel system in Valheim is so critical, and adding portals can change that travel experience. Just wondering what, I guess once you've built a game with so many systems, how do you keep track of how different players will use different systems? Is it ever overwhelming to try and understand that, or is it just sticking to like the vision of what you believe is the game that you want to create?
I think, like Andreas said, we don't have any metrics at all, and I'm not saying that's a good idea. But the good part of that is that we don't have metrics that tell us, oh, people are doing like this, so you should probably design around that. It's more like we are designing what we think this is going to be like the main experience of playing this game. And if people play it differently, I just think that's super cool. Like then that just means that there's different way to experience this game, and there's different things that players can talk about rather than just like doing the exact same as all their friends.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point actually. Having, especially with a live service game, having that main gameplay experience that you're building for, and then things that branch off, which some players might see as the main part of the game from their perspective, but that, as a studio you have to have that main pillar that you're building. And I guess a question I had was, do you feel like now that main experience is complete, that the game is complete from that main core experience, or is that at that point will you call it 1.0? What does that definition of done look like for Valheim in a live service game that's been in development for, I don't know however many years, since before early access as well? Do you know, like, is that end in sight for that main quest line?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some things we want to add to the other biomes as well for like in 1.0. Like when we reach 1.0, we want to really feel confident and sure and be proud of and say like the game is done now. And so when we like started working on Mistlands, we really started to push ourselves as well on like the visuals and the combat and new items and everything. And so once we've done that, and now Ashlands and working on Deep North, it's kind of like, yeah, okay, we're probably missing a few bits here and there throughout the game. And I don't say we'll add a lot to 1.0, like I think a lot of quality of future stuff will be added, but maybe a few items here and there, but we don't want to touch it too much either, because the experience right now from like meadows to plains, we think it's pretty good already, but some pieces are missing.
Yeah, and also I think like even though we didn't say have a roadmap per se, it's been quite communicated that like at launch there was missing the three of the main biomes they were there but not fully fleshed out. So like finishing those biomes, and that is going to be, you could say, then it's going to be a complete experience from start to finish, and also having a kind of a proper ending. So I think we definitely wanted to feel like this is a game more like a classic game that has a beginning and an end, rather than being a fully live service game that could just go on forever. we might still do some stuff after 1.0, definitely, but we still really want to feel like, okay, we're not just going to be an early access game that goes from being early access to, oh, okay, today it's 1.0 and like have a few little updates in there, but more like, oh, it's going to be done.
Yeah, so I guess that 1.0 release is you're going to invite players, old and new, to experience the full beginning to end storyline and the full systems implemented in the game. Is there any roadmap for that, or is it still just kind of taking Bogwitch, seeing what the feedback is, and kind of not looking too far ahead?
I mean, it's the big update that is left that will come together with 1.0 is the Deep North, so the last biome, and that will have, in a similar way to the other biomes, like the progression and a boss and things like that. And in addition to that, we do have a number of other things, like Andreas was saying there, that we want to add as well. We'll keep those maybe a little bit of a secret, but we may probably have a smaller update in here between somewhere, like have some stuff that we want to give out for people so they don't have to wait too long. But it's also nice to save some cool stuff to get it all at 1.0, because I think it, like, when it's this close to being done, it makes sense to leave some stuff so that if you play the game now compared to if you're playing it when it's all the way done, it makes sense to start from the beginning, and then it's nice to have a few things here and there which are new.
Awesome. We're going to take questions in a couple minutes, but one thing I want to ask, just to try and give some advice to any studios or any developers that are listening that maybe have released a game in early access, or maybe just released a demo of a game and started to kind of build that community. I'm wondering if there's any advice that you have to give to them to kind of help them in that initial release development cycle when they're still building the game, but there is something that's playable already. What's some advice you might have? And the community might just be two other people that are interested in the game, and how you'd kind of cater to them or maintain them as players.
I would say early access is great for some games and horrible for other games. So make sure that your game is suited for early access, and otherwise don't do it. And if you're going to do it, I would say also make sure, we don't treat the game as an early access game. We want it to feel, what is there should feel good, it should feel done. Like, of course, there might be areas and things that are not done, but it's better to not include them half done, or even have a button that says work in progress or something like that. It's better that what you're getting feels like, okay, this has reached quite a polished level already. And make sure that you have reached that far before going into early access. Because if you go too early, like I've heard early access, then like there's a high chance that people will feel like, no, you haven't reached the game isn't quite there yet. It's not really fun. Like, it's not polished enough to get any traction. And then you're just going to be, it's not going to be a nice experience for you either as a developer, I'd say.
Well, I think that's a testament to what the early access release for Valheim was like. There was a playable experience. The quality was good. The server stability was good, and was able to maintain this massive influx of players. So yeah, there definitely was clearly a lot of effort and care put into that. And
a lot of luck, I would have said as well.
Yeah, a lot of what? Sorry.
Luck.
Yeah. Well, just a little bit on that. I'll just, if you do have a question, or if you do have a mic in hand, just put your hand up, and then we'll get a mic to you, and I'll throw it over to you. Talking about luck, like, what do you think led to that luck that made it explode? Was there any clear incident that happened, whether it was a streamer or a bug that was resolved that made something happen? Was there any clear indication of what created that explosion?
I mean, we just have our theories. We don't know for sure. But I think it was kind of like a perfect storm, right? Because at the time we released, games like Rust and Fortnite and whatnot were very popular. But all those games are about just defeating each other. You're not really collaborating to become a team and kill other stuff. I think that was really missing out there. So that was one thing. And I mean, honestly, I think COVID was also a good timing for us, if you're allowed to say that. But like people were at home, they were stuck. They missed their like family or friends. They couldn't meet up. But in Valheim, they could meet up and chill, could play the game, and it just didn't have to like kill each other or other players. They could just have a good time. And I think that really helped us to blow up as well there. So.
Yeah, and I think also like, especially these factors, but I think like the combination of having many factors or good reasons that this might work. Like if you have one good reason, then maybe that's enough. But if you have 20 good reasons, maybe those will combine somehow and to make it even better. So I think like, yeah, your guess is as good as mine. And like at the office, there's like a million different theories to why this happened. But I'm a believer in like the combination of many small factors, like they kind of trigger each other as well.
Yeah, I mean, just having a good quality fun game, you can't, that has to be at least the foundation, and then whatever happens to make it go viral is, yeah.
Yeah, and actually one thing I would like to highlight is that I think one of the factors that it blew up was also the pricing. It was, I would say, arguably underpriced for what you get and the amount of quality that you had. And funnily enough, it's actually an accident that the price was what it was, because it was priced at $20 like US, which was also supposed to be 20 euros, which accidentally Steam translated over to 16.79 euros, and it was too late to change that. And I think that was like, even though that's like subtle difference there, and even 20 is kind of low, I would say, I think a lot of people, like looking at the broader market on Steam, I think a lot of indie games overprice their game a little bit, and because it's definitely worth all your effort and all your time and the quality that's there, and you compare it to lots of other games which are more expensive. But I think it's much better to go for having a low entry barrier as possible, because then you have the effect of people just be like, I don't even have to wait for a sale, I'll just buy this now. They can buy it for their friends. And also when they're not paying more, you have lower expectations, and then they might be surprised at like, wow, I got this much for just this. So I do think I think that it's better to maybe go a bit lower, I would say.
I mean, Valheim, I checked it yesterday, has 400,000 reviews on Steam, and it's mostly positive, which is incredible.
Not mostly positive.
The Steam ranking is mostly positive.
Very positive.
Very positive.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, my bad. That's a very big difference.
Yeah, we were right now we're at 94. We have been at 96 most of the time, which is overwhelmingly positive. But it's gone down a little bit over the years, so I don't know. Our hope is that maybe it will go up again.
Yeah, I mean, going under at 95 hurts. So yeah, we've got to get back up there. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. Yeah, apologies. Overwhelmingly positive is the goal.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, if you haven't reviewed Valheim, definitely give it a good. it could be enough to get it to that 95%.
Yeah.
Any questions from anyone in the audience that maybe has played Valheim? We've got a question down here. Or has any questions around the development, questions around early access, questions around the future plan, anything that that you might want to hear from Andreas and Jonathan.
Hello. I'm actually here for my friend. He's like a big fan, but he couldn't make it. And he has 3 questions, if that's okay.
Shoot.
So the first one is, if and when will you add bicycles?
There's no way this guy's here as well, right?
Yeah.
What the hell?
Is he from New Zealand? Like, we have our #1 troll, and I love this guy on Twitter. Like every single patch that every single thing we post, he's like, you forgot the bicycles or something. So yeah, we'll see. It's a secret. It's it's going to be like our #1 feature. So we'll have to wait.
Okay, he'll be excited then. Sorry if I missed it. He wants to know if there's any updates after 1.0 you're planning?
I would say we have said that there will be something after 1.0, and exactly what that is yet to be decided by us as well. So I think it's mostly down to what do we want to do after 1.0, and we'll have some long discussions about that, I think. Could be the bicycle update.
And do you want to hire a Kiwi artist? He's an artist. He can make bikes, I guess.
Actually, our good friend and art director, creative director Robin was originally maybe going to join us for this trip, and he's like part Kiwi, so I'm sure that he would love to have another Kiwi artist.
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible there, right?
Yeah.
They have to learn Swedish though, because it's a Swedish-speaking studio.
Yeah.
I'll tell him. Thank you.
That was 2 questions. Was that 3? No, that was 3. Awesome.
Hello. So I just wanted to ask a question. Before the period of early access, when you were just building the community, what did you find was the best way to actually, well, not make sure that the success you had is going to happen, but like, what do you think was the most effective way for you to build an audience even before, before you actually released in early access? Like, was there something that worked really, really well over others, or was it various things?
I think there wasn't such. This was also before our time, but there wasn't really a well thought out strategy. It was more like the focus was want to make something fun that's also not too complex. It just be like easy fun here, and I think that there's like a million different ways to randomly succeed. And you can definitely learn from a lot of people's different strategies, but copying somebody else will definitely not like make sure that will happen. But for Valheim's case, it was actually released for free on itch, and it kind of had like this small. It blew up a little bit on itch at the time, and then there was actually like people could donate to it then as well, and then eventually it was moved away from there back to Steam. So. I think every journey is very different.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? So was itch used as kind of like a playtesting ground ahead of early access release?
Yeah.
A question over there?
Oh,
I
was going to
nice, go for it.
Hey, I just had a question. Knowing that Valheim is very influenced, obviously, by Nordic and Scandinavian mythology and culture, I was quite interested to know, when you guys are coming up with a new feature or a new idea, I guess, would you guys say it's more comes from we see a thing in Scandinavian culture, we want to add to the game, or is it more like, we'd really like to add a new enemy, let's look at Scandinavian culture and find something that fits it? Is it one or both or the other?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think sometimes we say we just follow the rule of cool. But we do check a lot of Norse mythology as well. Like when we don't have our own ideas, it's kind of like there we go back to the Norse mythology, look in the books, look at drawings, what was being said about, did they have any interesting stories that we can try to find some things in? Like the abomination in the swamps, for example, that's just a Swedish small folklore, I don't know, what's his English word?
Rotvälta.
Yeah, English.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's like a tipped over tree.
Yeah.
But you're not supposed to go close to those because they might eat you up. And I think it's because they tip over.
Yeah, exactly.
They're still stuck, but they can kind of fling back up.
Yeah.
So kids shouldn't play around those. I guess somebody probably got hurt at some point, so they made a. Yeah, exactly.
Old wives' tale. Yeah. Awesome. We got another question there. We got a couple more minutes, so we've still got time for a few more questions.
Hi. Great talk. How do you guys go about controlling scope, especially in context of if you have a milestone for a publisher, and maybe you have very fixed dates that you need to hit specific targets on? How do you guys control scope in that way and timeline appropriately?
Yeah, I think there's we get a lot of great suggestions, and we also have a lot of cool ideas, and a lot of them are maybe a bit huge. So usually it's a little bit okay, yeah, that would be cool, but there's also a lot of other cool things we could do that are a lot simpler. And usually it's more is it unnecessarily complex? Can we simplify it a bit? Is it actually going to be fun? How many people are actually going to play this? Especially now we're working on more of the end of the game. A lot of your players are not even going to reach that point. So I think keeping it simple, I mean, it's really, that's what everybody says, but it's also really true. I think a lot, and you can see it in so many games where you have overly complex UIs, or you need a 45-minute tutorial to understand the game. I think those are also kind of, big mistakes.
That was a great question, actually. A follow-up on that. Based on the initial success, did that put Irongate in a position of power to not have to abide to any deadlines from either publisher or investors? Like, has that been quite a smooth roadmap experience from the last 3.5 years, where you've been in control of that deadline and you can push things, or have there been key deadlines that you have had to hit that have put the studio into times of stress?
No, we are very fortunate that we're like Coffee Stain, our publisher. They don't own the majority of our company, so that way we kind of have full control ourselves, which we're very fortunate to have. So no, there's never been like a deadline we have to hit. If we kind of come up with deadlines, very rough, but if we feel like we're not about to hit it, we'll just push it, because we're not into like, pushing the employees way too much. So yeah.
Yeah, and also like you were touching on there, if the game hadn't had success, it would have been done already, probably a while ago, because then it was like, okay, if it, like I think the initial hopes were like 20 or 30K sales.
Yeah, max.
Because then that would have been able to sustain the game for a little while, finish up the last biomes, and then maybe move on to something else. So there's definitely the effect of, it's definitely grown a lot because of that, and there also the scope, but that's more of like an internal, like both that the expectations, the external expectations have grown, but that also makes our own internal expectations grow, because we know that, okay, we do want to deliver something that's really good. But it's also always going to be a challenge and a balance.
Awesome, great questions. Any more questions? Got 2, 3, 4 questions, and then that's going to be us.
I was just going to say, so we are starting to run out of time, so
Yes.
we'll try to grab these, but there is also the Ask Me Anything session later today at 3:50. So
that's true. There's a session later this afternoon with Dave Oshry, and there's also another talk that's happening tomorrow, so there'll be lots of time to catch the team. But yeah.
Sweet. Sorry.
Bless you.
Thank you. So just to kind of piggyback off the question up here, of course, the game founded in kind of a culture that you're familiar with, sort of your own heritage. In New Zealand, we kind of have this very illustrious indigenous culture that a lot of our developers kind of try to draw on to kind of spread the awareness of it, but also just the celebration of it. What I'd like to know is what kind of you guys, and I suppose your team in general's advice would be to us about kind of using the culture of your heritage in your games, and kind of in a way that can gamify it while still kind of paying it a sense of reverence and a sense of accuracy, and kind of where the balancing act happens there.
Yeah, I think like it's a good question, and I think it depends on the game you're making, of course. For us, for example, we don't want to make fun of ourselves. Like, it's definitely, there's some wacky moments in the game, but we don't want to add something that's kind of like making it a little bit too crazy, or making fun of it. But other than that, I think that's it's a great platform and a great thing to do, but remember to do like game first. So make a great game, make it cool, and have those themes and those things in there. Then those will automatically become cool, and then people will be like, oh, I love this.
And just a final addition to that, did you have any cultural consultants that you brought in, like experts from outside of the games industry to advise on it?
No.
I would say like Norse mythology is a bit different compared to the cultures you have here in New Zealand. I'm very not really read into it, but as far as I'm aware, like the culture we have up there, as long as we just respect it and just try to not make fun of it, like that's kind of the way we go with it, right? Like we don't want to make fun of it, but
there's also so many interpretations of different things. It's kind of more like what do you say, legends and stuff. So you can really do a little bit whatever you want with it.
Yeah, awesome. Great. We're at time. If you do have any questions, I'm sure you can grab them outside the room or join the sessions later. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today and letting me ask you a few questions. Definitely follow them on socials. Follow the Valheim team, and review it on Steam. Let's get it up to 95+% to overwhelming positive.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.